Insights, solutions, and networking all come together at RSA Conference. Join a global cybersecurity community at rsaconference.com/ITSP Mag 24.
And hello, everybody. You are very welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity Podcast. I'm Sean Martin, your host, where, as you know, if you listen to my show, I get to talk about all kinds of cool things related to building out security programs that not only protect the business, but hopefully help it grow in a secure fashion. And I have a lot of opinions on how we look at security programs and a lot of idealistic views for what's possible. And it's always a treat when I get to talk to somebody who actually does the hard work and doesn't just follow the norms, but actually looks at ways to transform a security program. And my guest today, Nitin Raina from ThoughtWorks, has joined me. He was a recipient of a CISO 50 award, recognizing his and his team's program and initiatives regarding cybersecurity. And I said, I want to talk to Nitin. So I'm very grateful that you're here joining me today. And I'm sure my audience is gonna enjoy this conversation as we talk about how you transformed your program and got some good results. So Nitin, thanks for being on.
Thank you, Sean, and hello, everyone. I'd quickly introduce myself. I'm Nitin Raina. I'm the global CISO for ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks is a global technology consultancy which works in areas of strategy, design, and engineering. We are close to 10,500 employees with 48 offices and in 19 countries. And we've been in existence for, I think, almost 30 years. So and I've been with the firm this is my 14th year running. So been here a long time.
You've seen a lot in the role, a lot with the company, and certainly a lot from a cybersecurity perspective as well. If you could expand a little more on the scope of your role in terms of, as a global CISO, what do you oversee? Maybe some of your peers that you collaborate with, because what I want to do is help the audience understand what you care most about, or maybe not care most, but what you have on your shoulders in terms of is it security response? Do you look at privacy? Do you look at application security? So kind of that picture would be fantastic.
Sure. I think I can certainly do that. So in my role as the global CISO, I am responsible for security, all aspects security from an internal standpoint. Obviously, we are an organization which is into professional services, and we do software consulting work for our clients. So we do provide visibility and assurance to our client leadership teams. So you can look at them as account teams, so that they have visibility on how they are doing with aspects of security. Obviously, my role is also to prevent the crown jewels of the organization. So the aspects around application security sits within IT. So I collaborate and work very closely with the CIO. So me and the CIO, we are both peers, and I report to the COO of the company, the Chief Talent and Operating Officer. And data protection that you touched on, Sean, is sitting with legal and compliance. So the data protection officer reports to the general counsel, but we collaborate and work very closely. So a lot of collaboration, a lot of pairing, partnering that happens in my role.
A lot of conversations, planning, strategy, all kinds of fun stuff, which we're going to get into. So I know, and one of the questions I wanted to ask you was regarding the catalyst behind a change that you embarked on. In my conversations with a lot of CISOs, it's often the old CISO left, the new CISO joined. Let's take a look at the lay of the land, and no, that was a bad job. Let me redo everything, or let me swap out this part of the program for the way I've done it before. You've been in the role for a number of years now. So I don't know that you probably don't want to blame yourself for for the things you've done in the past, but you've seen a lot. So I guess there are two parts what I want to talk about for a few minutes here, which is kind of the state of the program before the transformation moment where one decided we have to do something different, or was it not a moment? Was it a transformation over a long time with no particular stake in the ground? So maybe describe kind of the view of the program leading up to the transformation,
Sure.
and what the catalyst was for that.
Yeah, and we'll touch on the meaty topic of business security maturity model. But I think you touched upon the journey, right? Journey of cyber program. If I have to start really at the high level at the top, so I have been in the role, leading information security for the last, I would say, this is my 9th year running. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been in the organization for 14 years. I was running IT operations before this within the organization. So I obviously know the IT side really well, the operations side really well. So that basically enabled me to actually run security program in a decent manner too. Now, within this 9-year period, we have seen evolution of the program at least 3 to 4 times. In fact, maybe when we get an opportunity, Sean, in the near future, I can talk about the reorg that just happened, and we have reorganized security as well. Like, we were very regional in our operations, but we have gone very centralized and global. So that change just happened in August of 2023. But every 2 to 3 years, as the business evolved, as the business grew and changed, we looked at our strategy, we looked at our organization, and started to make sure that we stay aligned. What we don't want, and nobody should do this, is you don't want your program to sit just there as an orphan, right? Not connected to the business. So because I see myself as a business leader too, not just as a security leader, and I always work very closely with the business leadership team and look at what strategy we have defined for the business, what objectives we have defined for the business, and make sure our cyber program is aligned to that. So we every 2 to 3 years we go through a change. Sometimes it's big, sometimes is small, but we evolve, we change all the time.
And can you, no trade secrets here, of course, but can you share some of the nuggets from the conversation? And what I'm trying to understand is how those conversations go. What do they sound like? What are the topics? So yeah, who's talking about the business? How are you absorbing that in a way that you can translate it to your program, translate it to your team, determine what tech you buy? I mean, there's a lot going there. Talk a little bit about those conversations.
Sure. And I'll talk about what's happening at present, right? We are going through a change now. So I think just closer to time, it's more relevant, and I think people will find it more useful, is as we were going through the business, obviously 2023 year has been fairly turbulent. We were looking at doing business restructuring internally, right? And when we looked at business restructuring internally, we came out with guidelines and objectives on, like, when you look at operational functions, we're looking at streamlining and centralizing them. So we took that as a clear guidance from a business leadership team, and then I took it back to my direct report. So I have a group called as Office of CISO. So there are 6-7 people who would report directly to me. I have a team of 40, but these 6 people actually are my strategic direct reports. So we work and we look at, okay, what should we do for operations of security? What should we do for the business alignment, GRC, threat hunting? Like, we have so many domains, right? So with all of those domain leaders, we looked at structuring our organization. We looked at the processes that we have. We look at the tech that we have. We look at the staffing that we have. And then we were looking at people where they would fit in really well. So we did a lot of movement internally over the last, I would say, course of 3 to 4 months, obviously talking with people as well. So it doesn't come as, hey, this is the model, now get aligned. We don't work in that manner. So it was a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions, but we defined the org structure. We defined what do you call as key roles and responsibilities for these new groups that were getting formed. We defined KPIs for these groups. And then we said, okay, let's look at our service blueprint and see what maps where. So it was a very good exercise. In fact, this could itself be a topic of podcast in the future. I would love to talk about it because I feel really proud of what we are, changing. It's not done. I think it's still going on.
Yeah. Well, you're very welcome back. I can tell you now that I'm happy to have that conversation with you for sure. And I suspect so. That's the current workings and conversations. I appreciate that insight. I don't know what was different in the previous round of change, but I want to talk a bit about some of the challenges that were uncovered.
Yeah.
As you realize, we needed to make some change, and so we're here to talk about security maturity, right? And connected to the business. And I think there's no question. I have podcasts on frameworks and standards and all this kind of thing that are designed to help CISOs and security leaders take that, here's what we need to do for the business, and translate it into how do we build a program. Talk to me a bit about how you looked at frameworks and maybe some of the challenges you had using them or not using them or whatever to kind of make that leap from business to ops.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So, I'll take a step back, right? So when we look at maturity frameworks, right, there are clear favorites that we have internally. So, when I have to go in front of the board, which is, every quarter, 6 months, based on how we are doing as an organization, I usually use the NIST CSF. So, out with the NIST CSF 2.0 as well. So that's the model. It's really good. I like it. The board members understand areas like identify, detect, respond, easy, and my roadmap is aligned to that. It works well. So that's the framework that I use when it's a conversation with the the board. But when we have to do work internally, right? So we are a business which is very decentralized, right? So we operate in regions. Earlier we used to operate in countries, but now we operate in regions. And if I take an example, let's say if I have to go to the European region and I have to talk to the main business leader, we call them the regional managing directors, right? How would I explain security to a business leader, right? Now, I could very well go and talk about identify, protect, and that might not relate really well to a business leader. It's like, what do I do with this information? What you're showing me, is this even something that I can align and think? So clearly we saw that the communication that we were having with our business leaders through various forums, because we did have well-established governance forums, we were reporting some measures, we were reporting some metrics, but it was still very technical and relevant to us, not to them, if I could say that. And that problem, I wanted to change. And I don't want to use any strong words, but I don't like when people look at security as just a technology problem. I want people to see it as a business problem. So heavy involvement, the frameworks that we were using were very focused on controls. They were very, I would say technical in nature and very hierarchical as well. So it wasn't resonating really well with the business leaders. Me and my team, not just me, because I'm not there in all the governance forums, we were not finding it to be a good thing. We were feeling the disconnect with the business.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I'm hearing is it's about telling a story, right? And having that story resonate with the audience that's listening. And if you're talking about controls, probably if they can make a connection of what the control means, right? What they're likely going to hear is there's a potential for blocking my business at some point.
Yes.
And so to my point that I made early on, I think there's a different way to approach security, and I think you're on the same page in terms of enabling the business.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with that story, bi-directional, by the way, of understanding what the business is trying to accomplish, and then a repeat back of here's how I enable that, right? Safely.
Yeah. Yes.
Safely. So can you maybe describe a bit about that? And I know in some of the items you shared with me ahead of time, you offered a couple problem statements that seemed to be the trigger, perhaps revolving around this point, that said we needed to do something differently here. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, I would love to do that, Sean. So I think the problem that we were trying to describe was, or based on the conversations we had with various people, was that we were not able to bring business leaders into the conversation, right? So when we were talking to them, they were listening to us, they were looking at those measures and metrics, but they were still seeing this as a technology problem, as a security problem. And they're like, hey, so, and I want to shift, clearly wanted to shift the accountability to the business, right? So take an example. If we have in a region, we have a client engagement where we have, let's say 50 people working on a project, right? And within the 50 people, it will be a mix of some would be developers, others would be, analysts, a couple of people would be quality people, infrastructure people. But when we are delivering a solution, we as security people, yes, we are not close to them on a daily basis, right? I might have two people in looking at security holistically for a region where we have 1,000 people. So you can imagine, we cannot embed ourselves in every project, in every conversation, right? So we are trying, and we were hoping that with a framework where we can get a technology leader, a business leader, an account leader to recognize the gaps that are there in with regards to security, or the opportunities that are there with regards to security. So we wanted to make sure we bring them into a conversation, and we help the business to look at building security in. That's something which we talk about even externally, that you should build security in while you're delivering your work. So for a software consulting company like ours, I think it's very crucial.
And I want to, maybe an extra highlight on this, because it's one thing to go into the annual strategy meeting or the 3-year planning meeting, whatever it is, and say, this is where we're headed, go off and do it. And we'll check in every quarter, right? And our stock price and results and all that stuff will reflect how well we're doing. And even you mentioned every quarter, perhaps every 6 months, there's a meeting at the board level looking at security. Stuff moves so much faster than that, right?
Yes.
So what you do with your program needs to, I'll say, respond, but also engage as part of the change. So not just respond to the change, but engage as part of it. So can you tell me a little bit about how you manage that and this goes to the embed piece, right? How does that really look? Because it's one thing I can hear it 100 times a day: embed security in, design security out, design. Doing it is different, and that's what I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think it's I wouldn't say we have solved or we know the way to actually fix this completely, but I think we're working towards it, right? So the business is changing, the speed and complexity is increasing on a daily basis. How we are trying to do is, there are a couple of ways. One is, I have very recently as well, and this has been, as I said, the program is evolving. If I take a step back, a couple of years back, we had introduced a role called as a BISO, right? So Business Information Security Officer. I in fact started not calling that person that, but like a regional security lead in 2015. So, we've been doing this for almost 9 years now, because we clearly saw that having security sit in a silo of, whether it's with IT or with somebody else, I don't care, but sitting as a silo never works. So embed those people who are BSOs closer to the business. So we actually did that, introduced that change way back in 2015 and went through an evolution. Now we formally call those roles as BSOs. So we have somebody who represents security as a key business partner and reports to the business. That's very interesting, right? That person, obviously is part of my team, has a dotted line to me, but they also report to the head of engineering or the head of business within the country, which is very good, right? They then see that person as part of their team, right? It changes the whole dynamics. It's not like a security person from global is coming in and giving their views and guidance. It's like, hey, this person is part of my team. So placement of personnel or individuals who would then be successful was the first thing. We also, what we also did was we created a program called as Security Champions program. I think, Sean, you would have heard from many other people. This is very common now, but we did that many years back, and we started embedding people in projects, in accounts, in regions, and in fact, not just embedding them, but training them, building on the capabilities, providing them the resources they would need to actually work successfully as security champions. So we did that, right? And on top of that, we also created a governance forum where we can talk about this, right? We can show progress to the business. We ran assessments, right? And I can go on because this topic is very dear to me. We ran assessments across our client projects to get a feel of areas where we are really strong and the areas where we're not so strong, right? And then show that result back to the business along with a clear list of actions that one could take to get better. So a lot of things, these are some of the examples, Sean, I could relate, which is around people, process, less on tech, because this is more around, yes, they will need tools. We will provide them the tools, but I don't think the tools is a major problem. It is the people, the conversations, the forums. That's key, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I suspect the BSO regional security director, or whatever you called them previously, would have a view of requirements. I was a product manager and a program manager for many years, building stuff. So everything looks like a project to me, right? With something you're aiming to achieve. Does your team have that view? And I'm looking at the point on CMMI and defining requirements. What do we need to do? How do we prioritize them? How do we communicate them? How do we manage risk in achieving them? Work through ambiguity, communicate externally to the entities that rely on the results of that. So talk to me a little bit about the model for setting the requirements and how your team navigates that internally, but then also navigates it externally with your clients, basically.
Yeah. So we did use this opportunity where we clearly saw gaps within the business to have a conversation with the business, right? And the gap existed on both the sides. So the way we focused and provided a response is to first build the model. So rather than me talking about dimensions and how do I measure those dimensions, we said, what do we really need here? What is that tool, that framework that we could use to talk to the business? So we started, there were a lot of interview sessions that we did, right? So obviously, there was a team of, I would say 4 or 5 individuals led by an experienced designer, named Diana at Renault, and a lot of other people who actually worked in interviewing stakeholders, saying, what exactly are you looking when you look at security? Like, so that not just from our side, but talking to business, talking to managing directors or demand people or people who are responsible for delivery, and get their views as well. So we did a lot of that, right? And then we also looked at our BISO group, our security champions, and interviewed them as well as to what they want to bring to the table, which would be relevant to have a conversations with the business leaders. So once we did that, we came up with I would call it a 10-point model. These are 10 dimensions or 10 areas where we felt that we should be paying attention. And then what we did was all of these broad areas or broad dimensions then required very clear requirements, right? So we basically looked at, I'll take an example. If we have to mature our governance, right, which is very crucial for any security team, how would we mature the governance? What are the dimensions? What are the requirements that we really have to look for? Or what are those key measure of success that we should capture? And not with a lot of effort, with less effort, right? Because when we start measuring things and we find it difficult, people drop it. We didn't want the model to get so complex that people hate from getting results to fulfill that, and then like, it's too difficult, I'm not doing it, let's try something else. So that's how we began the journey, making sure that it is it's translating well in the business language, making sure it's relevant to both our teams but to the business teams as well.
Yeah, I love it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the dimension you're talking about are the relationships and the governance, that list.
Yes.
Do you mind if I read them quickly?
Please.
So the first is about building relationships, adapting governance, security event management, security community, leader activation, secure software delivery practices, data handling, security capability, risk management, which is separate from governance, by the way, I'll note here, and visibility to everyone, and everyone where there's interesting. I list those just so people can hear them. We don't have time to go through all of them clearly on this show. What I want to ask you is there one of those areas that you found or experienced a whoa moment where things just really coalesced and it was the turning point where you get started and the wheels get moving and then something happens and the program really kicks into gear? Is there one of those that fits the bill for that description? And if so, how?
Yeah, I would pick two, if I'm allowed to do that. One is the leader activation, right? So I think it was very difficult for my team and me as well to actually get people to think about security as an area which they are responsible for. So every time, I'll take an example of an IT team, right? And this is not ThoughtWorks. This is just my broad experience. When you look at security, they're like too technical. There will be a specialist coming in. We don't have to worry about it. They'll tell us where we are wrong, and once they tell us, we'll work on it. That's been the traditional view, that security is the most technical, smartest person. Somebody who is like a hacker would come in and tell them all the areas where there are problems. And then somebody within the team will then, come up with a backlog, record things and then work on fixing it. That thinking, that approach is not valid, to be very upfront, right? It has to change. So the eureka moment for us when we started talking to people and we got the feeling and we saw in reality where people were like, yes, I know what I need to do. Now I know as a technology leader, I'm responsible for security as well. As a business leader, I'm responsible for security as well. That change, it took time. It wasn't easy. But when we started seeing that change, when people started sending emails and saying, oh, we need to take care of this, with regards to security, and the security person not saying that, that's when you know that the business is changing. So for me, that one was really, really important and crucial. And then I'll talk about governance, right? So governance forums could be it could be very interesting or it could be very boring, where people show up, they turn off their cameras, and they like, yeah, somebody would come talk for 30 minutes and then go away. We don't run our governance forums like that. We start with clearly the risks and the events that has happened, and we talk about metrics and measures that we have. Obviously it's lagging indicator, but it's useful information. So when we were able to get our leaders all excited to join the governance, and they're like, yes, I know the patterns of risks that we are facing. I now understand the patterns of events that I have seen in my region or globally. I can use that information and then go back to my teams or to my, obviously you don't expect the managing director to fix everything, but they will go to their CTO or their head of delivery and saying, what's going on? Can you please tell me? And have those conversations. I think that moment where everybody was feeling all excited, and yes, there are problems being reported, so I'm not saying it is an easy conversation, but they are at least seeing that there is clear areas where they can work or they can use their decision making to improve the business. For those two really stood out for me and for my team, and I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, and it's almost like your first point is embedded. I'll use the word embedded in the second point, because they're kind of the reverse. They're part of embedded in part of what you're doing to
Yes.
understand, but they have a vested interest, and I think that's
Yes.
where the excitement comes in. And I'll bring it back to the story telling, because it becomes even more than just a story. It's a conversation, a story you're building in real time together with each other, right? So that's all well and good, and as someone who likes to build stuff, I can see the I don't know, the excitement of having built something. If it doesn't work, nobody buys it. Building it doesn't matter, right? If you don't get the requirements right and you don't develop and deliver them properly, it's all for naught. So that's where, and this really struck me when I saw that you were recognized for your program, is that you achieved results. And we can talk a little bit about metrics here. I know you have 3 points that we want to walk through, so I want to go through all of them. But let's start with a quick view from you on where we might be measuring things. I don't want to say inappropriately, but where we measure things for our teams and expect that those measurements mean something again to someone not on the team. All the like time to remediate, time to detect, all that, and all the MTTXs, right? So maybe a brief view into that. Your thoughts on what are we measuring, and is it the right stuff? And then we'll get into some of the results that you see.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, I think the measurements that we have internally, I'm very clear with my team. First of all, one principle that we follow is measure something which you can measure easily, right? And measure the right thing too. So it has to be easy, and it has to be the right thing that helps us get better, right? So we take a lot of time and careful thinking to arrive at that, right? And measuring what's the completion of our awareness program, how many vulnerabilities we have fixed, all those are good measures, but I never take that to the leadership or even to the board, right? It basically switches everybody off, right? And I do, like, with all due respect, I have a very technical board that I report to, and I'm very happy with that because that keeps me on my toes all the time. But still, I wouldn't want them to be looking at my vulnerability dashboard or my CISO dashboard, because that doesn't tell them anything. That they know what they care about is our program maturing? Are we looking at the main threats and events, how well we are prepared? and what are the top risks for the company. That's what they really care about. So I'm very careful on what measures and what metrics I bring up, even to our senior leadership and then to our board, right? Internally, we do measure a lot of things. We look at how we are doing as a team, how efficiently we're running our security operations. I have a wonderful team that I'm really proud of, and a lot of folks in my team are from professional services within ThoughtWorks who have now embraced security. So I'm like really proud. 70% are devs that I have in my team, which is awesome, right? So they really like building stuff, automation. So it really helps me to have a very strong security team, which knows they have to constantly look at improving and getting better. So we do have metrics, which I will not dwell into, but what we talk to the business is largely our key indicators, right? So we talk about, as I talked about risks, we talk about security event patterns. I think that clearly shows them areas where there is an opportunity for us to get better. And then we talk about areas where we can really show about and these are qualitative, right? When I talk about business leader confidence and engagement, these are qualitative factors, but I have seen the leadership really values them. So when we started measuring, and I'm coming back to the business security maturity model, when we started measuring how effective this maturity model has been, we found that 70% of our business leaders, they were reporting that they are now able to do security decision making better, which was a big thing for us, right? If we have enabled our business leaders to do their job effectively, I think that's kudos, that's pat on the back for me and my team. So that's the first one. We also saw, we do report on security events. I am a strong advocate. The more you report, the better you get as an organization. And these are events, right? I'm not talking about, large scale security incidents. But if you track events, then you would know if something could go wrong, right? So that reporting, which was, which is not relevant to business leaders, but this is more relevant to our teams, because teams, they are working on problems. If they don't report problems to us, we would stay unaware. I cannot have, my sensors on client projects, because the client projects have their own infrastructure. I cannot be monitoring clients' infrastructure, right? So the teams could do that, and the teams can then proactively inform us and say, if there is something that they feel is not right, our request to them is report it. Report it to us, report it to your respective teams, client team representatives as well on the client side. So that reporting increased by, I would say, by 36%, which was a great thing. And that clearly shows us that our people are engaging, they're partnering with us, they're understanding that security is not only our responsibility, but everyone's responsibility. So those two, I thought I should highlight.
Yeah, that's impressive. And I'm wondering, were those objectives set at the beginning, or just results that you uncovered after?
The results that we uncovered after. Yeah. Because when we were doing this, nobody asked me to build one, right? I clearly saw a problem. My team clearly saw a problem, and it was like, we have to do this better. And if you wait for business to tell you everything, nothing will change, because they have too much on their plate. So these were after we rolled out the model. We said, hey, this is really working well for us. We got some great feedback from many business leaders, many CTOs that we have in our organization. They started loving it. In fact, ThoughtWorks is going to do a podcast on this on their official channels with my team who has worked on it. They're the ones who actually built it. So they're going to talk about it. Hopefully, maybe in a month or two, it'll be out as well. So,
yeah, I was going to ask you. I didn't know if it would be an off-the-wall question, but especially with so many engineers, devs on your team, if they get to work on stuff that connects closer to the business. So less, especially because I know devs like to build, they like to automate. One direction is to bring efficiencies and accuracy and whatnot to the program. But in what you're describing here, it's about not just that, but also communicating with the other side, outward to the business. Do any of your engineers get to work on stuff that goes that direction?
They do. Time and again, if we have an opportunity to partner with a group to build a security product or a technology solution, if we have the time and the bandwidth, we do get people. We second people, like they go on a secondment for a few months. It's like, hey, you are a dev, that's your passion, right? Go build stuff and come back because we need you. But at the same point of time, you'll be cross-skilled and you would still stay in touch with tech, which we don't want them to lose, because I obviously, it's a risk function. We can do tech stuff, we can do automation, but I cannot do exactly what we are doing on client projects because, we don't have that all the time. And I'm using a lot of SaaS now. There's a lot of integration work that we are doing and bit of automation as well. But there's no much of custom software development that's happening. So if we have opportunities, we would do that. But if we don't, we also allow rotations, Sean, in our organization. So I rotate people. So if you have been with us for 2 to 3 years and you want to go back to PS, you're more than welcome to do that.
Oh yeah, good. I hear organizations do that. It keep things fresh in many regards. As we wrap here, Nitin, I want to give you a chance to maybe highlight anything we didn't touch on yet, and then also give a shout out to your team. Anything that you want to share about your team, their capabilities, the way they keep up to date on technology, train, lunch and learn. I don't know, anything about your team that makes this fun for them to be part of, not just a program.
Yeah, I think a big shout out to all the folks who actually worked on this product or this maturity model. Diana Drono, she's no more with ThoughtWorks, but she was the one leading it. We had Robin, Doherty, Lisa, younger, Rohit, Mave. I can go on this big list. But all of these individuals and many others too, they are constantly looking to improve what we have today. So the way they look at it is they have a thing in them where they challenge the status quo, and they always look at how can we do this in a repeatable manner, much more quicker, much more smoother from an experience standpoint. So they'll always look at improvements, right? So that is ingrained within our team, and I give them my role as the CISO is to give them a clear path, as you call as a runway, for them to launch things, right? Obviously, we don't go rogue. We stay focused on what we really have to do, because if we try to solve things which does not need to be solved, then I feel the team has gone rogue. So we are very careful that we stay focused on our objectives, what we are trying to do, and then within that area, constantly look at improvements. Like, for example, now we have so much of hype on Gen AI, and I have very talented devs. So that wherever we could use Gen AI within our cyber function, we are already doing spikes to do that, so that we can then have our time saved and utilized to do other work, right? So we do that all the time. We do provide a platform for people to constantly look at upskilling. So as I said, majority of my team is made of devs, so they would love to learn more around cybersecurity. So the way I believe, and I'm a strong advocate of that, you learn by doing. You can take a course that may be 5 to 10%, but you will learn when you do stuff. So we very recently, I would say 12 or 18 months back, have started our offensive security program. So we're doing a lot of work we've ran 12 campaigns, if I could say that. And they're learning. They're constantly learning, adapting, sharing the results, coming back, doing a retrospective, looking to improve. So that's one example which folks like Nazneen, Lahan, and others have been instrumental in running within my team. I can go on. The list could be very big. So
That sounds good, and you may have touched on it already. My final question as we close here, which is, what's the one thing you see and I'll say we as the collective cybersecurity community, what do we need to do to redefine cybersecurity?
So I think there is one quote which I was reading earlier today, and I think it's very important for all of us to understand that. Like, and this is a quote from Gartner, where Gartner looks at IT and security leaders are often considered the the people accountable for protecting the enterprise from threats. And the business people are the ones who are making decisions, right? You might want to do something within marketing, which yes, might lead to security and technology risks, but I wouldn't be stopping them, right? That's not the role of a security person. So I feel the making everybody understand that cybersecurity, yes, you will always need a specialized function, you need skilled people, but you need to understand when you look at doing new things or acquiring new tools or solutions or even taking things to the market, think about security the way you think about technology, the way you think about finance. So security is not to be seen as a special function. And I tell this to whomever I talk to, then don't see us as a special child. See us as a part of your business. We are, you can see us as a technology function or an operational function. In ThoughtWorks, I'm seen as an operational leader. I report to the CT, Chief Technology, Chief Tech Talent and Operating Officer. And that's great because that allows me to work with the person who is the chief people officer, the person who's running operations, the person who runs our offices and IT. So it's then seen more mainstream. I think blocking it or putting it under IT, I think is a disservice to security as a function. That's the point I want to make. And if it resonates with others, maybe this change can happen at some point.
I think it does. I think it will, and resonate, and I think it will have an impact, hopefully, as well. So, Nitin, thanks you so much for taking the time today, for doing all the work, sharing it with whomever to get you recognized. And I'm happy that I crossed that feed item and was able to connect with you. And appreciate you taking the time today to share with us some of your insights and how you manage that program, that journey. And like we talked about earlier, I'm very, very happy to have you back again to talk about the current moment in time that you're working through and how you achieve success on the other side of that as well.
Thank you so much, Sean, for this opportunity. And again, I want to end with the point that this is I'm just the one talking about it. There are people in my team who did a lot of hard work, still are doing. So I want to acknowledge efforts from all of them who did the hard work for us to get this CISO 50 award recognition. And we are continuing to improve this technology and security framework, the maturity model that we started a few years back.
And is it, I know I said we're done, but is it Joanna Park that
yes,
is
she's my boss. Yeah, I report to
Talent
Joanna.
Operating Officer.
Yes.
I'll give her a shout out for giving you the space to do this work too.
Yes.
Because I think clearly leadership understanding the value of it is important.
Yes.
And I'm glad she did that. So, all right. Well, thank you, Nitin. We're going to call it good here. We'll see you again soon. Everybody listening, watching, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you got a few nuggets here for your own programs, and stay tuned, subscribe, please share, And we'll see everybody on the next Redefining Cybersecurity.
Thank you very much.
Insights, solutions, and networking all come together at RSA Conference. Join a global cybersecurity community at rsaconference.com/ITSP Mag 24.